the darkness of space, the silence of endless galaxies, and a ship on board of which something entirely unexpected happens to the astronauts. Alien and its sequel, Aliens, have long since become classics, but few people know, at first, these stories looked completely different. Scenes that changed the characters, increased the tension, and even rewrote the ending were left behind the scenes. They were cut, hidden, reshaped. And only because of this did we see the versions of the films that became iconic. In this video, we'll look at how deleted scenes could have changed the first two Alien films, and how differently we would perceive today one of the most iconic sci-fi franchises in cinema history. Get ready. Things are about to get creepy and very interesting. The story of Alien began in the early 1970s, when screenwriter Dan O'Bannon, studying film at the University of Southern California, began developing the sci-fi comedy Dark Star, together with director John Carpenter and concept artist Ron Cobb. The film featured an alien in the form of a painted beach ball with rubber legs. But after this experience, O'Bannon wanted to create a more realistic and terrifying extraterrestrial for a true horror movie. And in the mid-70s, he began work on a frightening story about a group of astronauts on a spaceship. The working title of the picture was Star Beast, but O'Bannon didn't like it. So he changed it to Alien, noticing how frequently the word appeared in the script. Later, O'Bannon recalled that while writing the script, he was inspired by films such as The Thing, Forbidden Planet, and Planet of the Vampires. When most of the script was ready, O'Bannon and Shusett decided to send a draft to various studios, pitching it as Jaws in space. But no one wanted to take on Alien because of its excessive brutality and gore. Fortunately, after some time, their mutual acquaintance passed the script to Walter Hill, David Giler, and Gordon Carroll, the heads of the production company Brandywine, associated with 20th Century Fox. Brandywine signed a contract with O'Bannon and Shusett, but Hill and Giler were not satisfied with the script and made numerous edits and changes, making it less grim, which the original screenwriters didn't like. Alien was approved by the studio with an initial budget of $4.2 million. At first, O'Bannon intended to direct the film himself, but the studio suggested Walter Hill, who refused, considering the special effects work too complicated. Then, impressed by the film The Duelists, the studio offered Ridley Scott the chance to direct Alien, and he immediately agreed. Scott created detailed storyboards that included the design of the spaceship and costumes, which pleased Fox so much that the film's budget was doubled. However, Scott wanted to emphasize not horror, but science fiction, drawing on films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Star Wars, and describing Alien as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. The production designer was Swiss artist H.R. Giger. He designed the look of all stages of the alien, from egg to adult, as well as the environment, the surface of the planetoid, and the derelict ship. Interestingly, when Giger transported his illustrations from Switzerland to the US, at the American border, they were deemed too shocking, and customs officials thought the artist was a maniac and pervert. Fortunately, Dan O'Bannon explained to them that these strange drawings were for a film. The initial cut of Alien was over 3 hours long, but the creators had to remove more than an hour of scenes they felt were not realistic enough and slowed the narrative. Most of the deleted scenes were included in the Laserdisc release, and some episodes appeared in the 2003 director's cut. Interestingly, Scott decided not to release just the original film with extra scenes, but to edit an alternative version, replacing some theatrical scenes with new ones. For example, after waking up, Kane prepares breakfast. The crew listens to the signal from the derelict ship. Lambert doesn't want to let Kane with the facehugger back on board. Ripley communicates by radio with Parker and Brett, and learns how repairs are going. The crew checks Kane's health and sees a dark spot on his lung in the X-ray. Brett suggests catching the escaped alien with a net. Ripley asks Lambert if she slept with Ash, and she also finds Dallas cocooned and Brett mutated into an egg, then burns them. You can also see a longer version of Brett's death, an extended scene where Parker, Ripley, and Lambert try to flush the alien out of the airlock, and a longer build-up to the alien's attack on Lambert. Originally, the film was to end with the destruction of the Nostromo and Ripley's rescue in the shuttle Narcissus. However, Scott came up with a fourth act in which the alien sneaks aboard the shuttle and attacks Ripley. The director presented this idea to Fox and negotiated a budget increase and additional shooting days. But his proposal to end the film with Ripley's death, the alien was to bite off her head, was rejected by the producers. After the release of Alien in 1979 and its box office success, the production company Brandywine Productions began exploring the possibility of a sequel. But 20th Century Fox believed that sequels cost twice as much and earn half as much, and convincing them otherwise was no easy task.
I said no, and I mean it.
The studio's leadership at the time considered the first film's success a fluke, and overall interest in horror films was declining. The situation was further complicated by a lawsuit filed by the Alien producers against Fox over the film's profits. Only after the lawsuit was settled and new studio leadership was in place did talks of a sequel become more serious. In 1983, the search for a lead screenwriter began, and James Cameron was selected. The producers of the original Alien, David Giler and Walter Hill, had already been interested in collaborating with Cameron, though no suitable original projects had emerged. In just 3 days, James wrote a 42-page first draft, which was heavily based on another of his stories, Mother. The script received mixed feedback and was sent back for revisions while Cameron was working on The Terminator. As production on that film was delayed due to Schwarzenegger's commitment to another project, Cameron expanded the Alien script to 90 pages. The new version was better received by studio executives, but they still weren't ready to give Cameron the director's chair. That changed when The Terminator hit theaters and became both a critical and audience favorite. Cameron was then officially offered the chance to direct the Alien sequel, and he brought on his girlfriend, Gale Ann Hurd, as producer. James later said he wrote the film as an allegory for America's involvement in the Vietnam War. In his vision, the colonial Marines represented the US's conservative war hawks, while the xenomorphs stood in for the Vietnamese. He compared Ellen Ripley to war veterans suffering from PTSD. Those who, despite the trauma they've endured, are often the first to return to combat. The studio wanted to design new sets and alien models, but Cameron opposed that. He focused instead on developing the look of the Alien Queen, doing the design work himself. He also personally created the design for the dropship that delivers the Marines to the colonists' planet, because none of the proposed models met his expectations. These ships ended up resembling the unmanned hunter-killers from Skynet. In fact, Aliens include several nods to The Terminator, and there's even a theory that the two films take place in the same universe. The road to completing the Alien sequel was anything but smooth. Every stage of production was marked by conflict. Fox pushed to cut the budget from $35 million down to $12 million. Cameron and Hurd briefly walked away from the project, returning only after the budget was slightly increased. It ultimately settled at $18.5 million. The director's cut of Aliens runs 154 minutes, but releasing the film in that length was seen as a commercial risk. James Cameron was unsure how to shorten it without making it feel rushed. Eventually, producer Gale Ann Hurd suggested cutting a few scenes entirely. For example, the subplot about Ripley's daughter. Interestingly, she was portrayed by Elizabeth Inglis, who is Sigourney Weaver's real-life mother. Another removed sequence was an early scene showing the colony and the derelict ship. Cameron hesitated to cut it since it was the only direct connection to the original film, but ultimately admitted that the plot still worked without it. The final theatrical cut was trimmed to 137 minutes, and the deleted scenes were restored in a special edition. Sigourney Weaver was extremely unhappy with the theatrical version. She even threatened to never appear in another Alien film. Even the director's cut differs from the 1985 script. In that version, Ripley gives the Marines a more detailed briefing on the xenomorphs. Newt asks Ripley to adopt her, and there's a scene where Bishop encounters an alien in the tunnel. That last moment became the subject of rumors. It appears in the film's novelization, and some claim to have seen it in TV airings. However, it's absent from all bonus materials, and likely was never filmed, possibly due to time. The script also included a scene in which Ripley, while rescuing Newt, runs into Carter Burke, who has been cocooned. He begs for help, and Ripley gives him a grenade. Unlike the Bishop tunnel scene, this one was definitely filmed but never included in any version of the film. In an even earlier script draft, Ripley, Newt, and Hicks were all to be cocooned. Additionally, the script mentioned that Vasquez and Drake had served time together in the same juvenile prison, but this is never referenced in the final film. Which of the first two Alien films is your favorite?